Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there. But leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months.
Although each individual prepared the sacrifice for himself or his family, he was not allowed to actually approach the altar. Until expiation or payment was made, he was considered sinful, and therefore stood barred from access to those areas which were designated as holy. Because of this, he stood in need of a mediator, someone who could intervene and minister in his behalf. The person designated to do this was the priest. Only he could approach the altar and offer the sacrifice which would make the Israelite clean and acceptable. In this role, he stood in the similitude of Christ, the great mediator between God and man. The priest prepared the way by which repentance could be granted and man could become acceptable to God. The altar played a key role in the ordinance of sacrifice. Although the tabernacle and later the temple were the abode of deity, the altar was the spot where Jehovah promised to meet with his people.
And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands standing before the God of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire proceeds from their mouth and devours their enemies. And if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this manner. These have power to shut heaven, so that no rain falls in the days of their prophecy. And they have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to strike the earth with all plagues, as often as they desire. When they finish their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Then those from the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations will see their dead bodies 3.5 days, and not allow their dead bodies to be put into graves. And those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them, make merry, and send gifts to one another, because these 2 prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment.
There's certainly no reason for us to leave Australia, certainly not in the conventional sense. We had a wonderful life and every opportunity, but it was always clear to both my wife and me that when our children would be raised, we wanted to raise them in Israel. And if Israel, then in Jerusalem. So we actually moved to this neighborhood, to Ramot.
Jesus said to him, If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me.
And I've been there from the very first day that we came to Israel, which is now over 18 years. I have pictures at home of people dancing in the streets on the day that Malki and Michal and 13 other people were murdered in the center of Jerusalem.
And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him.
This was an act that brought them such joy that they had to dance in the streets. Jerusalem is one of the most interesting places in the world. There's so much going on here. It's a fractious, noisy city. But
Now after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, Come up here. And they ascended to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. In the same hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. In the earthquake 7,000 people were killed, and the rest were afraid and gave glory to the God of heaven.
Also a very beautiful city, a city where there's action all the time. Not in the traditional sense, it's not non-stop action like the discotheques of Tel Aviv, like the beaches of Tel Aviv, but it's a city with so much going on here, so many interesting stories to tell. Jerusalem is a city that's been plagued